The session 2 weeks ago was suspended. Therefore, we are merely resuming this afternoon. So, in the meantime, while we are preparing the virtual attendance of the other members, again, the session is suspended.
Ayan na.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, we'll defer the reading of the reference of business till Monday because it's a long reference of business, Mr. President, with the permission of the body. And I move that we take up some resolutions, Mr. President, that are on deck in our agenda for today. Mr. President, I move with the permission of the body that we consider proposed resolution number 494, taking in consideration 498 and 501. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measures in order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the death of the Honorable Alfredo Fred S. Lim, former Senator, former Mayor of Manila, and former Secretary of the Interior and Local Government.
Mr. President, we move to adopt, unless someone of our colleagues would like to give a, we recognize, Mr. President, Senator Joel Villanueva, Mr. President, to sponsor the measure.
Before we do that, I was informed by Senator Tolentino that he is sponsoring the LPS Resolution 494, which is...
Okay, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. So,
Senator
would you-
Francis Tolentino is recognized.
President, dahil po ngayon ay hindi lang nagkaroon ng COVID-19, ay pinagdiriwang po dapat natin ang linggo ng wika. At ngayon din po ay araw ng isang dating Senate President Manuel Luis Quezon. Hayaan niyo pong isulong ko ang Senate Resolution 494 na akda ng inyong lingkod kasama po si Senator Lacson at ang Senate President bilang pagkilala sa mga nagawa at pagbibigay ng sympathy kay dating Senador Alfredo Lim, dating Mayor ng Lungsod ng Maynila, dating kalihim ng DILG, dating Direktor ng National Bureau of Investigation. Mahal na Pangulo, una ko pong natatandaang nakaharap si Senador Alfredo Lim, Mayor Alfredo Lim, nung ako po ay alkalde ng Tagaytay, kung saan siya ay naging guest speaker sa isang kolehiyo, yung dati pong Metro Tagaytay College. Siya po ay naging graduation speaker. At kami po ay parehong nasa entablado doon sa harap ng graduating class ng kolehiyong nabanggit ko, kasama ang mga magulang, kasama ang mga profesor, kasama ang mga estudyante. Mr. President, tandang-tanda ko po nun yung kanyang talumpati na binibigyan halaga yung mga magulang na naroon sa bulwagan sa isang kolehiyo sa Tagaytay. Pinasalamatan niya po ang mga magulang, pinasalamatan niya ang mga guro, pinasalamatan niya ang mga graduating members ng klase. Subalit, ang hindi ko po makakalimutan, Mr. President, ay habang nagtatalumpati si Mayor Lim, ay tumutulo po ang kanyang luha. Tumutulo po yung kanyang luha dahil ang sabi niya doon sa mga estudyante, tanda ko po ito, to paraphrase, mapalad kayong mga mag-aaral dahil sa harap ninyo at kasama ang inyong mga magulang. Hindi ko po naiintindihan yun kung bakit niya sinasabi habang tumutulo ang luha. Kalagitnaan po ng kanyang talumpati ni Mayor Alfredo Lim, Senator Lim, ay siya po ay bumaba ng entablado at dumiretso po sa kanyang sasakyan. Tandang-tanda ko po pati yung sasakyan, nag-iisa po siya, kasama lang yung driver, isang maliit na Honda CRV. At siya po ay umalis na. Hindi na po tinapos yung speech. Kaya po naiwan sa stage, ako po, yung dean at ilang mga guro. Lahat po ay nagtataka bakit tumakbo si Mayor Lim sa sasakyan, lumabas po sa auditorium na lumuluha at umalis na. Hindi na po namin nakita. Akala ko po noon, Mr. President, ay mag-CCR lang. Subalit umalis na. Nalaman ko po pagkatapos yung palang kanyang sinasabi sa mga mag-aaral na mapalad kayo, kasama niyo ang inyong mga magulang, magkakaharap kayo ngayon sa pagkilala sa inyong graduation, ay dahil pala hindi niya nakaharap ang kanyang mga magulang. Hindi niya nakasama sa graduation kahit minsan. Hindi niya nakasama sa kanyang buong buhay. Dahil si Mayor Alfredo Lim, sa pagkakaalam ko at kwento rin niya sa akin, ay iniwan lamang na bilang isang sanggol sa harap ng Hospicio de San Jose. Siya po ay pinalaki lamang ng mga madre at kinuha ng kanyang tiyahin noong malaki-laki na siya at sinabing, nasaan ba si Alfredo? Yung puntyahin niya nagpalaki sa kanya, nag-aral ng abogasya sa University of the East, naging pulis ng Maynila, naging Western Police District Director, at malapit-lapit din po sa amin sa Tagaytay, Mr. President, na nung kulang matagal bilang hepe ng Philippine National Police, Superintendent ng Philippine National Police Academy, Mr. President. At naging National Bureau of Investigation Director, naging Mayor ng Maynila, naging senador na hindi niya tinapos ang kanyang 3 years. At siya po ay bumalik uli sa minamahal niyang lungsod. Napakaraming beses po kami nagkaharap ni Mayor Alfredo Lim, ni Fred Lim, hindi lamang po noong siya ay mayor pa, siya ay tanda ko pa ho ang suot niyan, at ito'y matatandaan din po ni Senator Lacson, ni Senator De La Rosa, yung po bang bush jacket na masikip na parang sa Metrocom nung araw. Ganyan po yung uniforme na kaki nung araw ng ating kapulisan, at talagang straight body si General Alfredo Lim. Ang hindi ko po makakalimutan, Mr. President, ay nung ako po ay MMDA chairman, ako rin po ang Metro Manila Council chairman, hindi po uma-absent ng meeting si Mayor Fred Lim. Lahat po ng patawag na meeting sa MMDA, nandun po yan. At meron po siyang isang hiling sa akin noon na hindi ko rin makakalimutan hanggang ngayon. Francis, marami akong bubuksang ospital, pero gusto ko pag binuksan ko yung Santa Ana Hospital sa Santa Ana, Manila, ay pumunta ka. Mag-inaugurate tayo roon, may dialysis machine, napakagandang ospital. Lagi ko po nadadaanan yung Santa Ana Hospital pag nagso-shortcut po ako papunta ng Mandaluyong, dadaan po ng Kalentong, Show Boulevard. Nakakapagtaka lang, Mr. President, nung siya po ay nasa malubhang kalagayan na dahil sa COVID-19, pinilit po niyang pumunta sa ospital ng Santa Ana at doon po siya pumanaw, Mr. President. Isang pagpapakita na hindi niya pinili yung mga malalaking ospital. Doon po siya sa ospital kung saan kasama ang kanyang mga kababayan. Naburol po siya, Mr. President, ng ilang araw sa Asuncion, Tondo, sa lungsod ng Maynila, bagamat na-cremate na siya. Sinabi ko rin kay Mayor Fred Lim, alam mo, Mayor Lim, talagang magkakaharap yung ating landas kasi ang lola ko ay tumira dyan sa Padre Rada, ilang hakbang lang mula sa bahay ni na Mayor Alfredo Lim. Mr. President, bagamat hindi nagtagal sa Senado si Mayor Lim, si Senator Lim, malaki po ang naiwan niyang ambag at legacy sa bulwagang ito. Mr. President, siya po yung nagsabi at tandang-tanda ko po yung kanyang mga inabit sa Roas Boulevard na mga karatula, maliliit na plywood. The law applies to all or none at all. Mr. President, hindi po makakalimutan yan ng mga tigalunsod ng Maynila. Nagtapos ng sekundarya sa Far Eastern University noong 1948, nagtapos ng bachelor's degree at Bachelor of Law sa University of the East, at nagkaroon po ng isang master's degree in National Security Administration with honors sa National Defense College of the Philippines at Doctor of Philosophy of Criminology sa Philippine College of Criminology. Mahaba-haba na po ang nagawa at iniwan sa lungsod ng Maynila ni Mayor Lim. Ang hindi po natin makakalimutan ay kung paano niya po nilinis ang Ermita at Malate sa lungsod ng Maynila. Kung paano niya po sinimulan ang ang war on drugs sa lungsod ng Maynila. Kung paano niya po tinayo ang City College of Manila sa lungsod ng Maynila. Doon po sa dating Philippine National Bank Building sa Escolta, Manila. Ang sabi niya, gusto niyang umunlad muli at makilala muli ang Escolta sa lungsod ng Maynila. Napakahaba pa ho kung babanggitin ko lahat ito, Mr. President, bilang senador, marami po siyang bills na i-file, kagaya po ng pagbibigay ng libreng medisina sa mga indigent patients at yung pong pagbabawal ng paghaharas sa mga kamag-anak ng mga nakaburol na hindi pa nakakabayad sa puninarya at marami pa hong iba, Mr. President. Ang recipient of several awards, including the Outstanding Achievement Medal for Professional Competence as PNPA Superintendent. Hindi ko po makakalimutan at naalala na rin siguro ito ni Senator De La Rosa and Senator Lacson. Bata pa ho ako noon. Yung unang hazing po doon sa PNPA, ay palagay ko na-resolve yan ni General Lim noong mga panahong yon. Isang Hall of Fame awardee ng kapulisan. At kung ako po, Mr. President, ay humawak din ng Metro Manila Film Festival ng mga nagdaang panahon, ang hindi ko po makakalimutan ay nung meron pang Manila Film Festival kung saan si Mayor Lim mismo ang umawat doon sa nakitang dayaan sa pagbibigay ng awards. Kung matatandaan niyo po ito yung Take It incident, Mr. President, na nagpapatunay na talagang handa po si Mayor Lim na kahit matigil yung programa, maipakita lang yung integridad ng film festival. Mr. President, nakikiramay po ang Senado. Nakikiramay po ang lahat sa mga kababayan ni Mayor Lim sa lungsod ng Maynila. Nakikiramay po tayo sa kanyang pamilya na ngayon sa aking balita ay naapektuhan pa rin ng COVID-19. Nakikiramay po tayo sa lahat ng mga naging kaibigan ni Mayor Lim sa Manila Police District, sa City Hall ng lungsod ng Maynila, sa mga nakasama niya sa Senado, sa lahat po ng mga nabigyang hustisya nung siya po ay nasa National Bureau of Investigation pa. Si Mayor Lim po ay hindi malilimutan ng sambayanan bilang isang tunay na alagad ng batas, bilang isang tunay na lingkod ng bayan, bilang isang tunay na Pilipino. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of Senate Resolution 494 as a recognition of a great man who once walked this august hall, the Senate, Senator Alfredo Lim. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
All right, before we do that, we would just like to place on record that there is a sponsorship speech that we will just insert into the records. And then before we recognize Senator Joy Villanueva, we would like to welcome, recognize Senator Ronald De La Rosa.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is with great honor that I pay tribute to a humble public servant, a simple Manileño, and a staunch advocate of a drug-free Philippines. Former Senator Alfredo Lim, a beloved mayor of the city of Manila, who also served as commander of Western Police District, director of the National Bureau of Investigation, and as secretary of the Department of Interior and Local Government, is best remembered for his being Dirty Harry in his crusade against illegal drugs and criminalities. Malapit sa aking puso ang alaala ni Senator Alfredo Lim, pagkat iisa ang aming mga adhikain na maisalba ang ating kabataan laban sa illegal na droga at maibalik ang ROTC para sa ating mga kabataan. Bilang isang huwarang pulis, si Mayor Lim ay naging idolo ng marami sa ating mga kapulisan. Kasama na ako dyan. Ang kanyang kontribusyon sa larangan ng batas at kaayusan ay tinitingala ng marami. Tunay nga na karapat-dapat na pamarisan ang magandang halimbawa na ipinamalas ni Mayor Lim. I join the whole nation in expressing my deepest sympathies for the passing of a great statesman and one of the most decorated and known public servants. Most of all, I thank Mayor Lim for making this nation great through his humble contribution. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator De La Rosa. We now recognize Senator Joel Villanueva.
Very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, every day the COVID-19 pandemic devastates our nation and reaches a tragic milestone. In fact, as of yesterday, 2,687 Filipinos have COVID-19. Sa panahon po ngayon, COVID-related man o hindi, nakakadurog po ng na malamang may kapamilya ka, may kaibigan ka o kakilala o kapwa Pilipinong pumanaw dahil po alam nating limitado o halos walang pagkakataong dumalaw o makiramay man lang. Kaya nang mabalitaan po natin, Ginoong Pangulo, ang pagpanaw ng dating senador at dating Manila Mayor Fred Lim, labis po tayong nalumbay dahil alam po nating hindi man lang po natin siya masisilayan o magagawaran ng nararapat na pagkilala bilang lingkod bayan sa loob ng 50 taon. This representation, together with Senator Mig Subiri, Senator Nancy Binay, and Senator Sani Angara, filed Senate Resolution number 498 to remember and give honor to the Philippines' Dirty Harry, who died on August 8 at the age of 90. He served the city of Manila twice, in 1992 to 1998, in 2007 to 2013. During his 12 years as Manila Mayor, he built hospitals in each of Manila's 6 districts and established the Universidad de Manila that provides free tertiary education to the city's poor students. Mayor Lim joined the police force when he was only 22 years of age and became one of the most decorated policemen in the country's history, who later made his way to the Manila City Hall, Philippine Senate, and the Department of Interior and Local Government as Secretary. Hindi ko po malilimutan, Ginoong Pangulo, ang mga aral at payong ibinigay sa atin ni Mayor Lim, lalo na po sa paglaban sa korupsyon, paglaban sa prostitusyon at pornografiya. Ito po yung ilan lamang sa mga sakit ng lipunan na inumpisahan din po nating labanan nung tayo po ay maging representantes ng SIBAC doon po sa mababang kapulungan. Indeed, the life and works of former Senator and Manila Mayor Alfredo S. Lim will continue to lift the spirit of the Filipino people amid the COVID-19 pandemic. His courage, bravery, and service to the nation will never be forgotten. Maraming salamat po. Pagpalain tayong lahat ng ating Panginoong Diyos.
Mr. President,
Yes, the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Drilon, is recognized.
thank you, Mr. President. I rise and request permission from the principal author, Senator Tolentino, if I may be allowed to co-sponsor proposed Senate Resolution 494, honoring our late colleague, Alfredo Lim. I have known Mayor Lim since the 1990s. I was the Secretary of Justice, and we worked together in the law enforcement area with him as NBI Director, and I was Secretary of Justice, which relationship continued when I became Executive Secretary. Mr. President, Mayor Lim had a very colorful public career. I would not spread into the record the adventures of our late colleague, but I can say that he indeed is a man of the law. Having said that, Mayor Lim, as I knew him, would push the law to its acceptable limits because he would adhere to the rule of law. But what the law is subject to interpretation and I recall the many lively debates we have whether or not an arrest is warranted under our rules of court. In any case, indeed, Mayor Lim or Senator Lim contributed much to the stability of our nation during those very difficult times. And the reason why he pushed the law to its limits is because he wanted to help in providing a better political stability to our society then. So that's how I knew Fred Lim as a member of the executive branch. And let me just place into the record, my impressions on Mr. Lim or Fred Lim when he was in the Senate. I remember very well. Our colleagues and I would just look at each other the moment Fred Lim would take the floor on the privilege hour, because at that time, or every time he would take the floor on a question of privilege, he would read the columns of Solita Munsod for the day, because he is so impressed with it that our records in the Senate would be replete with the columns of Solita Munsod placed into the record during the privilege hour availed of by Fred Lim. Indeed, Fred Lim was more than just a mere public servant. He took his job very seriously, and indeed, he was a loss to our country. So with that, let me join our colleagues in offering, in passing this resolution and honoring the memory of the late Fred S. Lim. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
I'd like to also be a co-author of the resolution recognizing Mayor Senator Lim. Mayor Lim ran with my father in 2004 for the Senate, and I know that my father had great respect for him. But more than that, our family is very grateful to him because he recognized FPJ and actually as national artist and put up a statue in his honor in Rojas Boulevard. So I don't think anyone has given my father that much honor on a national level aside from the National Artist Award. And because of him, even if we're not really very close to him, he gave that honor. And so we thank him and we hope that his memory will live on. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, indeed, what Senator Grace Poe mentioned is very accurate. It's the reason we immediately filed PS Resolution 494. Is there anyone else who would like to sponsor the measure? If not, then
Mr. President.
yes, the majority there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move that we adopt, subject to style, Senate Resolution number 494, taking in consideration Senate Resolutions number 498 and 501. I so move.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none. PS Resolution 494 is hereby adopted, taking into consideration 496 and 501.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we, with the permission of the body, consider proposed Senate Resolution number 502. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration is in order.
May we ask the Secretary, Mr. President, to read the title of the measure?
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
PS Resolution 502, resolution urging the Office of the President to preventively suspend immediately the top management of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, those involved in the alleged corruption and fraudulent schemes in the agency, and those responsible for delay or refusal to submit documents pertinent to investigation carried out by the National Bureau of Investigation and the audit being conducted
Mr. Disco.
on audit.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I be allowed to sponsor the measure, Mr. President?
Yes, the majority leader is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, at the onset, I would like to congratulate the members of the Senate, particularly those who are involved in the investigation of PhilHealth, headed by our Senate President. In the last several hearings, Mr. President, we've seen and uncovered so much anomalies and irregularities that are happening and transpiring within the PhilHealth insurance system of government. And what shocked me, Mr. President, was yesterday's hearing when, after my query with the different agencies that were online, asking because there was an issue of non-compliance when it came to the submission of pertinent documents to the investigation, watching a complaint by the NBI on live on news the other day, Mr. President. Yesterday, what had also come out of our hearing was the Commission on Audit representative, Director Cleotilde Tuason, was nodding her head when I was asking if this particular problem was hampering our investigative bodies. And so I recognized her, and she actually gave the affirmative, and she gave a long narrative on why and what documents and why they were given by the PhilHealth organization, and even mentioning that there were contracts that were supposed to be submitted after approval by the agency, and until now these contracts have not been submitted to the agency for COA scrutiny. And under the memorandum, they're supposed to be given a few weeks or a week after approval by the agency. So yun yung po nakakagulat at napamura nga ako, Mr. President. I apologize. I was so upset. I could not hide my anger because I could not believe that there was an agency of government who could blatantly disregard investigative agencies such as the NBI, the National Bureau of Investigation, and the Commission on Audit when it comes to documents needed by these agencies for investigations. It's really so blatant that there are shenanigans that are going on by the agency. And therefore, I decided, Mr. President, to come up with this resolution. I'm hoping my colleagues can support me. But for the record, I would like to also congratulate the Ombudsman for swift action. Today, the Ombudsman had suspended several number of members of the PhilHealth board, as well as officers of PhilHealth, and that's a good start. That's a good sign, and I feel that's a small victory for the investigations done by our Senate, Mr. President. And with that, Mr. President, I just would like to make an amendment of my measure, if I can do so, Mr. President, and open the period of amendments.
Right.
Mr. President, on if with the permission of the body,
Yes.
I would like to include another whereas clause. After consultation with Senator Bongo earlier, he talked to me. We spoke together with Secretary Bingbong Medialdia. We will include an additional whereas clause, whereas the president created a multi-special task force headed by Justice
Let's
Secretary.
open the period of amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All
I
right.
move to open the period of
Please open.
amendments.
Majority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to include, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, a new whereas clause, and it says, whereas the president created a multi-agency special task force headed by Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara to investigate also the alleged corruption in PhilHealth. Thus, we urge the said special task force to immediately recommend to the Office of the President the preventive suspension of the concerned PhilHealth officers to preserve the integrity and ensure transparency on its investigation.
Where do you want that whereas to be inserted?
This will be third to the last paragraph, Mr. President.
Third to the last paragraph, so that will be on page 2.
On page 2, Mr. President. After
The
insurance
third
agency,
paragraph.
yes, becomes the fourth paragraph, Mr. President. There's a paragraph on top, then there's another whereas, and it becomes the fourth paragraph, Mr. President.
So it will be the second to the last whereas.
Yes, Mr. President.
That is your proposal. All right. Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted.
As well, Mr. President, on the last whereas, to add the phrase after the word ombudsman, the Senate and the House of Representatives on their exercise of oversight powers and inquiries in aid of legislation, comma. So the whereas will read, Mr. President, whereas allowing these PhilHealth officials to remain in office may give them time to tamper with, conceal or destroy important records, and further hamper the investigations of the NBI, COA, the Ombudsman, the Senate and House of Representatives on their exercise of oversight powers and inquiries in aid of legislation, comma, and other investigative bodies conducting investigations on PhilHealth. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendments adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with the permission of the body, I move to adopt the Senate resolution, Mr. President. Senate resolution
start.
number 502.
Yes, Resolution 502. Yes. The motion is to adopt subject to style. Before we adopt, let me just include into your comments earlier that it is good and a welcome sign that the Ombudsman has suspended a number of PhilHealth officials. But I'm just surprised that 2 or 3 of the officials who are right in the middle of the controversies are not included in the suspension. That surprises me. Namely, Limsiaco, Aragona, and Morales. All the rest were suspended. So,
We agree with you, Mr. President. I totally agree with you. May kulang po sa suspension. Hopefully, when we come up with the recommendations, Mr. President, I know you'll be terminating the hearings very soon. When we come up with a strongly worded committee report, susunod po itong mga ito.
yes, hopefully. We are hoping to draft the committee report this weekend and submit it to the Senate as soon as possible, hopefully by next week. All right, so any objection? Hearing none, PS Resolution 502 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And finally, for our agenda today, Mr. President, may we recognize Ma'am Grace po, Senator Grace.
Yeah.
Expose
Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, this is just in support of Resolution 502. This is the critical step for PhilHealth to recuperate. So how do we move forward from this train wreck? We must have a PhilHealth starter kit. We call for the preventive suspension, as mentioned, for the most guilty bunch, to give way to a proper audit and investigation. But the question we have to ask is, who will take over the sinking ship in the middle of a pandemic? Surely this country has no shortage of men and women who can run PhilHealth. We thus expect that more competent individuals will be appointed outside of the usual pool of recycled appointees. Push this call further, it was made crystal clear to us during the hearings that problems afflicting PhilHealth today had their beginnings during the decade when PhilHealth only knew one leader, Secretary Duque. If the problems were small, suspicious growths, then, like a doctor, he should have properly excised them. He failed, and that it is why the cancer has metastasized, so that PhilHealth is reeling from the corporate version of a multi-organ failure. You can actually draw a line that connects PhilHealth's present travails to the same scandals which erupted during Duque's watch from 2001 to 2010. Yung problema noon, yun pa rin ang problema ngayon. This leaves us with one prescription. To save the patient, we must dismiss the doctor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Right.
Mr. President, before we leave the subject matter, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. President, before we leave the subject matter, may I ask that with the permission of the body, that all members be made author of the measure?
With no objection, all members are hereby recorded as co-authors of the measure. And by
Thank
the way,
you, Mr.
for the
President.
record also, Senator Lito Lapid is a co-author of PS Resolution 494.
Yes, Mr. President. We'd also like to put that on record. Mr. President, one final measure in our agenda is the approval for third reading on Senate Bill number 1216, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading. And by the way, Mr. President, just for the record, these printed copies were distributed electronically to the senators August 10, complying with the 3-day rule. So I move that we vote on third reading, Senate Bill number 1216, Mr. President. I so move.
Okay tayo.
Ask the Secretary to read the title.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure, and then if there is no objection, we continue with the third reading and the roll call vote.
Senate Bill number 1216, an act declaring May 18 of every year as the National Higher Education Day. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, De La Rosa, Trilon,
Yes.
Gatchalian, Go, Gordon, Ontiveros, Lacson, Lapid, Marcos, Pacquiao, Pangilinan,
Yes. Yes.
Pimentel III, Poe,
Yes.
Recto, Revilla, Tolentino, Villanueva, Villar, Leary,
Yes.
President Soto.
Yes. We are waiting the count. We are awaiting the count. With 19 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. Senate Bill 1216 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President,
Senator Delon, recognized by the leader.
yes, Mr. President, with your permission and indulgence, just before we suspended our sessions last week because of the pandemic, the majority leader informed me that the bicameral conference contingent of the Senate for the Bayanihan 2 law was expanded in terms of the membership of the majority. I was asked to nominate an additional member for the minority to reflect the proportion in the Senate. However, in view of the suspension of our formal sessions for several days last week until yesterday, we had no opportunity to do so. So let me take this opportunity, Mr. President, with your permission, that we be allowed to nominate Senator Risa Hontiveros to the Bicameral Conference Committee on Bayanihan 2, representing the minority, Mr. President. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, if there is no objection, the motion is adopted or approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we suspend or adjourn, may we recognize a distinguished colleague from Bulacan, Senator Joel Villanueva, to give his manifestation on the approval of his measure.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. I will not take much of your time. May I just be allowed to thank all of you, especially our Senate President, Majority Leader, and all of our colleagues who supported this Senate Bill number 1216. And may I just be allowed, Mr. President, to insert for the records my manifestation. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I, Mr. President? Mr. President, we are actually in the middle of the bicameral conference committee hearings of the Bayanihan 2. We suspended our session earlier and we'll be going back to the BICAM after this session. But we're hoping to pass it by tonight, Mr. President, for the information of the body. If it is all right, Mr. President, may we suspend session today till tomorrow afternoon so that we can ratify the measure by tomorrow afternoon, I was told by my chair, our chair, Chairman Sani Angara, and the members of the bicameral conference committee that we'll be able to complete the discussions by tonight. So that tapos na po tayo, Mr. President. We don't have to wait till next week, and we can show the people that we would like to pass this immediately, Mr. President. If that is all right with you, Mr. President, as we discussed earlier in the afternoon. Basically, bukas, mag-open lang po tayo ng session, ratify the BICAM, and then adjourn session till Monday, if that is all right with the body.
Any comments?
What time tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Majority Leader?
Well, let's-
3 o'clock. We can do 3 o'clock, or we can do earlier. I know we have a briefing that Senator Pia had set up. What time is the briefing, Senator Pia, tomorrow with the
Yeah.
finance team?
Senator,
I think it's 1 or 2, but let me verify with my staff, pero parang 1 or 2 yan.
Baka we can open the session earlier. Maybe we can do it at 2 and then have the briefing at 3. So tapos na. And then we can just
Sure.
listen to the briefing.
I just need to get the availability of the Secretary of Finance, kasi he's attending. He's basically briefing the Senate.
The briefing, Pia, is at 2 p.m.
Yes, I just confirmed 2 p.m. So should I now ask for the availability of the Secretary at 3?
before we
President,
agree,
we have to ask
before
the
we
presiding
decide,
officer.
Majority Leader,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the assurance first that your BICAM will be done by 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock for us to resume at 2 and ratify. Because if
yes.
you're not, then it will be a waiting game.
Yeah, we'd like to recognize the chairperson, Mr. President, Senator
Mr.
Sani
President,
Angara.
Chairman namin,
Senator Sani
mabilis.
Angara,
Sorry, I just had to say that.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Pia. Thank you, Mr. President, Majority Leader. We're about, I think, subject to how my colleagues feel, we only have about 10 to 12 provisions left, Mr. President. No, so I think there's a great possibility of finishing it tonight or tomorrow morning at the latest. My suggestion, subject to the leadership's wishes, is that we still have session at 3 o'clock. Push through with the DOF briefing at 2. And then at 3 o'clock, we have our session, Mr. President. I submit, Your Honor.
Pero,
The recommendation
Mr.
is...
President,
uh,
yeah, may I add lang to that, Mr. President? Wouldn't it be more prudent, Chairman, if Mr. President, I may be allowed to address the Chairman, maybe be more prudent that we ratify first before we have the briefing, because the briefing can change the ratification?
That's a good point. That's a good point by the Majority Leader. I submit, Mr. President.
I move that the briefing be done next week. After both houses have ratified.
That's up to the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, I think, Mr. President.
Ako naman, Mr. President, I can't impose on my colleagues. No, same people have been in the every day, have been participating in the PhilHealth. So I know we're all tired. I'm just reminding you of our commitment on the timelines. But it's really up to you. I totally understand. Subject din sa availability din, no? Kasi if we move it to Monday briefing, kayo na mag-start ng Tuesday.
To the chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, I think, Mr. President.
I think, with all due respect, Mr. President, I submit that we should finish the BICAM committee work, have it ratified as soon as possible. The matter of the briefing can be done next week without any harm. We can adjust to the time of the Secretary of Finance. But we try to finish our BICAM and have it ratified by the Senate tomorrow. I would, 3 p.m. Is a reasonable time, and all the and we will submit if I share the confidence of my chairman that we can finish it. So I would suggest we proceed with that, and we can postpone. I would request Pia to postpone the briefing. If it's create, I have no problem saying. I mean, we have almost a consensus on create, and I don't know what else the briefing will be, but there is no harm in postponing the briefing anytime next week.
To, let's just say, to 10 a.m. on Monday. Is that acceptable to Senator Pia, the chair?
Yes.
May
It's
CA. No. Sorry. There will be a CA on Monday as requested by some of the members because of the delay that the armed forces have been encountering. Abutan na ng birthday nung iba. So they have been pending since March. Ano?
Tuesday
When-
kaya, Mr. President, Tuesday morning.
Kawawa naman. So
Pwede Tuesday morning, Mr. President.
Pwede. It's up
Tuesday morning, 10.
Cayetano.
Speaking of birthdays, it's also the birthday of the Senate President on Monday.
Uy, happy birthday, boss. Happy birthday.
briefing blowout, briefing blowout.
Virtual blowout.
Yeah,
Happy
Tuesday is
birthday,
fine.
FP.
Tuesday is fine, Mr. President. We, subject to the confirmation of the Secretary of Finance, we
All
can
right.
do the briefing on Tuesday.
Therefore, Senator Pia Cayetano will confirm with you.
Yes, I will do that, Mr. President. Thank you, Minority
Mr.
Floor Leader. Thank you.
All right.
But we'll push through to Senator Pia. We will push through with the agenda next week for CREATE. So don't worry.
Yeah, so
So,
technically after that,
Monday, Monday.
I can start interpellation. Yeah, I'm ready with the new
Yeah.
substitute bill. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so the BICAM, according to Senator Angara, the BICAM could be finished tonight or early tomorrow morning. And we just want to make sure that the Senate version, especially on the Department of Tourism funding, is intact.
Yeah, that's well taken, Mr. President. It's one of the items that is left to the last because we know that there is a real, genuine difference of opinion. Let's put it mildly, Mr. President. But rest assured, we will do as you instructed us to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes. Thank you very much. And you can inform the members of the House that when it comes to that, we want to make sure that it'll be good for the good of the country. And sometimes my nickname is Stonewall Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just got a call from our distinguished colleague, Senator Richard Gordon, because he had a hard time coming into the WebEx platform. But I see him now. And we just like to put on record that we can see him as well, Mr. President. I'm not sure if he can respond. But with that, Mr. President, there being no other matters, and while we have to go back to our BICAM with the distinguished chairperson, Senator Angara, and our colleagues in the Bicameral Conference Committee, I move that we suspend session till 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, August 20, 2020. I so move. Mr. President.
Hearing none, session is suspended until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Thursday, August 20, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. President. Balik